Hey, good morning. So, this is always a fun question to answer. It is very complex and very nuanced. I'm going to do my best to try to answer this probably within a couple part videos, but it is even broader. So, hopefully, this will make sense. And as you listen along, if you have more questions, please feel free to reach out and let me know. But, kind of in a nutshell, to simply answer your question, element is just one approach to clinical care and kind of a lens that we look through within Chinese medicine and acupuncture world. Acupuncture and Chinese medicine have been around for thousands and thousands of years, but along the way, of course, we take these branches of what providers at the time, practitioners at the time thought was the best approach to helping people get better and live healthy and fix pain and all of these things. So what comes out of that are different schools of thought. And so 5-element is just one lens. It's also referred to as the 5 phases. A couple other bigger groupings that you may come across at some point are classical Chinese medicine, which is its own broader subgroup that people can dive into. And then there is TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, that is much more well-known in general, especially here in our Western culture. And so they are all their own unique style of practice and lens and study. And that's the easiest explanation that I have for you. Both myself and Dr. James, the base of our training was in classical 5-element acupuncture. It is a more gentle approach to clinical work. We typically use fewer needles, usually anywhere from 4 to 8 in a session. I know the further down the road I get with patients, I am even more so on that lighter side where I'm using 3-4 needles per treatment. How we were taught to insert needles is often much more gentle than some other schools of thought. And so those are I would say, bigger differences within clinical practice. On a theory level, and again, this is one of those places that I'm going to note it's a bit more complicated than what I am about to share, but it gives I would say, cleanest lens of difference mostly between 5-element acupuncture and TCM. So TCM was born out of this need to standardize the medicine a little bit. Somewhere in the 50s and 60s, government kind of wanted to figure out a way to preserve this 1,000-year-old medicine, but also make it easier to teach, explain, talk about, all those good things. And so what happens is the kind of like pulling the pieces apart and spreading them out on the table. And you say like, all right, we've got this aspect of the medicine. These are the pieces that we can easily replicate, teach, talk about. And these are the parts that are a little more challenging to create clarity and clinical understanding with. And so they put all the pieces back together that were easy to standardize. And that is what forms TCM. It's a much more pattern-driven branch of our medicine. It's very prescriptive in its own way. And then those parts that were a little harder to have clarity around or clear understanding just got set off to the side. A lot of that work is the mental emotional work. It's some of the spiritual aspects of Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And it's the part that kind of holds the mystery of what it is that we do. At the end of the day, Chinese medicine and acupuncture are medical systems. They are complete systems of being able to address a variety of health concerns. But there are aspects of it that are very hard to understand how this works and why it works. And the physical components of what this medicine has to offer is much easier to study. It's much easier to wrap our brains around. It's easier to get other people on board with. Insert this point here, it warrants this response within the body, and poof, we feel better. And all of that kind of got grouped together and layered together and studied and taught and replicated in a really beautiful way. And that is the framework and construct of TCM, which is traditional Chinese medicine. So it is actually not as traditional as the name leads you to believe. 5-element acupuncture, on the other hand, still incorporates all those more complex parts. So because of that, we do a lot more mental emotional work. We are treating at a different level, and it is just it's a different clinical lens and different approach to patient care. We, within that, are looking at the patient as a person standing in front of us as a whole person. It's a more health-based lens. And then we have these layers of life that just get wrapped around that cause some of the disharmony that we feel and experience. So when we are working with them, we treat them as a person first, and taking these symptoms and the disharmonies into account, but they are not driving why we do what we do. The person in front of us is. And I like to think of 5-Element is more holistic in its approach. It is patient-centered, person-centered first, and is less about the prescription of what we need in order to help them. TCM is a beautiful medicine. I had my own experience with it. It was my early exposure to acupuncture and Chinese medicine, and I loved it. It was wonderful. It was fabulous. It did its job. So I love that I had such a positive experience with that, because they both work beautifully. But there was something different about the 5-Element that I think if you're getting treated, you would never know that it was missing until you experience 5-Element acupuncture. And there's this piece that is it's just different. And I credit 5-Element acupuncture to why I became an acupuncturist.